Have you ever caught yourself wondering why a younger woman seems drawn to an older man and then immediately doubted your own conclusion? Not because you think she is lying, not because you think you're imagining it, but because somewhere deep inside a voice whispers, "No, that can't be the reason." If you've ever felt that tension, stay with me. And if these conversations about human nature and relationships help you see yourself a little more clearly, consider subscribing. Not because I need another subscriber, but because sometimes the things we refuse to understand end up controlling us. Now let me tell you something most men never say out loud. The older they get, the more confused they become about attraction. When they're young, attraction feels simple. You assume women want youth, excitement, beauty, potential. You assume time is working against you. Then something strange happens. A man reaches his late 30s, 40s, 50s, sometimes even beyond that. And suddenly he notices certain women looking at him differently. Not all women, not every younger woman, but enough to make him question everything he thought he understood. And that confusion creates a dangerous trap. Because many men respond to it in one of two extreme ways. They either become arrogant and convince themselves every younger woman secretly wants an older man, or they become insecure and convince themselves no younger woman could ever genuinely choose them. Both conclusions are wrong, and what fascinates me is that neither mistake comes from confidence. Both come from fear. The fear of being rejected, the fear of being judged, the fear of discovering that the story you've been telling yourself for years might not be true. You see, when people talk about age gap relationships, they usually talk about numbers. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. But psychology rarely cares about numbers the way people think it does. Psychology cares about emotional experiences. A woman does not experience a man as a birth certificate. She experiences him as a feeling. And before anyone misunderstands that statement, let me be very clear. A feeling is not enough to build a healthy relationship. Character matters. Compatibility matters. Respect matters. Shared values matter. But the feeling someone creates inside you often determines whether you become curious enough to discover the rest. And that's where many men miss something important. They spend years focusing on how old they are. Meanwhile, women are often paying attention to something entirely different. How safe do they feel around you? How understood do they feel? How much pressure do they feel? How authentic do you seem? How emotionally steady are you when life becomes difficult? Because here's something I have observed repeatedly. Many younger women are not attracted to older men because they are older. They are attracted to certain qualities that sometimes become stronger with age. There is a difference, a very important difference. And if you don't understand that distinction, you can spend years misunderstanding your own experiences. I've spoken to women who dated younger men. I've spoken to women who dated older men. And the conversations were almost never about age itself. They were about how those relationships felt. One woman described a man 15 years older than her. She said something that stayed with me. She didn't say he was handsome. She didn't say he was successful. She didn't say he was older. She said, "When I spoke, he listened like my words mattered." Think about that. Such a simple sentence. Yet most people overlook its significance. Because underneath that sentence was something much deeper. She felt seen, not evaluated, not managed, not impressed. Seen. And if there's one thing I wish more men understood, it's this. The older you get, the less your age becomes the story. Your emotional presence becomes the story. And that can either become your greatest strength or the thing that quietly pushes people away without you ever realizing it. Because age does not automatically create wisdom. It only creates opportunity. Some men grow older and become calmer. Others grow older and become bitter. Some become grounded. Others become cynical. Some become emotionally secure. Others spend decades collecting wounds they never heal. And women can often feel that difference long before a man ever speaks about it. That's why the real conversation isn't whether women like older men. The real conversation is much more uncomfortable. What kind of man has age turned you into? Because that question changes everything. Let me tell you something that may feel uncomfortable to hear. Many men believe age gives them an advantage. But what actually attracts people is not age. It's what age reveals. And those are two very different things. I've sat across from men in their 50s who carried the emotional energy of a frightened teenager. And I've met men in their early 30s who possessed a calmness that made everyone around them feel at ease. That's why attraction is rarely as predictable as people want it to be, because human beings respond to energy before they respond to logic. They respond to emotional experiences before they respond to explanations. And this is where many age gap relationships begin, not with attraction, but with relief. Relief. Such a strange word, isn't it? But listen carefully. A younger woman spends years navigating a world full of performance. People performing confidence, performing status, performing intelligence, performing mystery. Everyone trying to become desirable. Everyone trying to appear valuable. Everyone trying to win. And after enough experiences like that, something changes. She becomes exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. She starts craving something she can't always describe. Something quieter, something steadier, something real. And then she meets a man who isn't desperately trying to prove himself. A man who doesn't dominate every conversation, who doesn't become defensive over every disagreement, who doesn't panic when silence enters the room. Suddenly, being around him feels different. Not exciting in the dramatic movie sense, but peaceful. And here's the strange thing about peace. Most people don't realize how valuable it is until they've lived without it. A lot of younger men watching this might feel frustrated hearing that, because society spends so much time talking about excitement, the spark, the chemistry, the butterflies. But very few people talk about emotional nervous system regulation. Very few people talk about the relief of feeling safe enough to relax. The relief of not having to constantly guess someone's intentions. The relief of consistency. And consistency is one of the most underrated forms of attraction that exists. Not because it's flashy, because it's rare. You know what many women secretly tell psychologists? Not the things they post online, not the things they say in public conversations, the private things, the honest things. Many of them are tired of unpredictability, tired of emotional games, tired of relationships that feel like roller coasters, tired of wondering where they stand, tired of receiving attention but not emotional investment. Now, that doesn't mean older men automatically solve those problems. Far from it. Some older men create even more chaos. But when a man has truly matured emotionally, something happens. His presence lowers anxiety rather than increasing it. And that effect can be incredibly powerful. The problem is that many men misunderstand this. They hear words like maturity and imagine authority, control, leadership, strength. But emotional maturity often looks much smaller than that. It looks like patience, listening, self-awareness, the ability to disagree without turning every conversation into a battle, the ability to hear criticism without collapsing into shame or exploding into anger, the ability to remain emotionally available even when vulnerable. And vulnerability, that's the part many men avoid, because vulnerability feels dangerous, especially if you've been hurt before, especially if you've spent years building armor around yourself. I understand that, more than you know. But here's the paradox. The armor that protects you from rejection often prevents genuine connection. The walls that keep pain out also keep intimacy out. And over time, some men become so protected that nobody can truly reach them anymore. From the outside, they appear strong. Inside, they feel invisible. That's why some age gap relationships fail before they ever begin. Not because of age, because of emotional distance. Because one person is trying to connect, while the other is trying to avoid being hurt. And eventually, that tension becomes impossible to hide. The truth is, women are often far more sensitive to emotional availability than men realize. They notice when a man is present. They notice when he's emotionally absent. They notice when he's still carrying old heartbreaks that were never healed, even when he never mentions them. Because pain has a way of leaking through behavior, through reactions, through fears, through hesitation. And that's where the conversation becomes deeper. Because the biggest challenge in an age gap relationship isn't usually the age difference itself. It's whether both people are meeting each other in the present, or whether one of them is still trapped in the past. And what I've noticed is that many men don't recognize that trap until it's already shaping every connection they try to build. I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine sitting across from a woman you genuinely like. The conversation is easy, she's laughing, you're relaxed, nothing feels forced. And yet, beneath the surface, there's a question you never ask out loud. A question that quietly follows many men into relationships. Why would she choose me? Not because you lack confidence, not because you're weak, but because somewhere in your life, you learn to measure your worth through comparison. You compare yourself to younger men, more attractive men, more successful men, more charismatic men. And eventually, comparison becomes so automatic that you stop noticing you're doing it. You simply feel the result, the insecurity, the doubt, the hesitation. What fascinates me is that insecurity rarely announces itself honestly. It disguises itself. Sometimes it becomes jealousy, sometimes control, sometimes emotional withdrawal, sometimes endless overthinking. But underneath all those behaviors is the same fear, the fear of not being enough. And if we're talking honestly about age gap relationships, we need to talk about that fear, because it quietly destroys more relationships than age ever does. I've worked with women who deeply cared about a man years older than them. Yet over time, the relationship became exhausting, not because of the age difference, because the man became obsessed with the age difference. Every disagreement somehow returned to it. Every insecurity somehow returned to it. Every fear somehow returned to it. He couldn't simply experience the relationship, he was constantly analyzing it, testing it, questioning it, waiting for proof that his fears were right. And eventually his fear became heavier than the age gap itself. That's the tragedy of insecurity. It often creates the very outcome it's trying to prevent. A woman may begin by feeling connected to you, but if she constantly feels responsible for managing your fears, the relationship slowly changes. She stops feeling like a partner. She starts feeling like a reassurance machine, and nobody can carry that role forever. Now, before you misunderstand me, let me say something important. Every human being has insecurities, every single one. Women do too. The goal isn't to become fearless. The goal is to stop making your fear someone else's responsibility. That's emotional maturity. And emotional maturity becomes incredibly attractive because it creates freedom. Freedom for two people to actually know each other, not just manage each other's wounds. I remember a woman describing her relationship with a man nearly 20 years older than her. What stood out wasn't his confidence, it was his comfort with himself. There was a difference. Confidence often says, "Look at me." Comfort says, "This is who I am." Confidence sometimes seeks validation. Comfort doesn't chase it. Confidence can be loud. Comfort is usually quiet. And quiet confidence has a way of making people feel safe, because it doesn't demand anything from them. Think about the men you've respected most in your life. Not admired from a distance, respected. Was it because they were perfect? Probably not. Was it because they never made mistakes? Of course not. Usually it's because they accepted themselves honestly. They didn't spend every moment trying to prove something. They weren't trapped in performance. And that's what many women are responding to when they feel drawn toward a mature man. Not perfection, not superiority, authenticity. The feeling that they're interacting with a real human being, not a carefully constructed image. Because eventually, every mask becomes exhausting. Every performance becomes heavy. And many people spend years searching for someone who feels emotionally real. Someone whose words match their actions. Someone whose confidence isn't built on pretending. Someone who doesn't need to win every conversation to feel valuable. And here's something I wish more men understood. A woman who chooses you is not asking you to compete with every younger man on earth. She's asking whether she can trust the experience of being with you. Can she trust your character? Can she trust your emotional stability? Can she trust your intentions? Can she trust that the version of you she sees today is real? Because trust is where attraction either deepens or slowly disappears. And the older we get, the more important that becomes, not less important, more. Which brings us to something people rarely discuss when talking about age gap love. A reality that is much deeper than attraction. A reality that begins the moment two people stop asking, "Do we like each other?" and start asking a far more frightening question, "Can we actually build a life together?" This is usually the point where fantasy meets reality, and reality is where many people become uncomfortable. Because attraction can begin a relationship, connection can deepen it, chemistry can make it unforgettable, but none of those things automatically answer the question of whether two people can actually share a life. And that question becomes especially important when there's a significant age difference. Not because age gaps are doomed, they're not. I've seen age gap relationships thrive beautifully. I've also seen relationships between people the exact same age collapse completely. The difference was never the number. The difference was whether both people were willing to face reality honestly. You see, in the early stages of attraction, people often fall in love with how someone makes them feel. But eventually, life arrives. Not dramatically, quietly, through routines, responsibilities, stress, family expectations, different goals, different timelines. And that's when emotional maturity becomes more important than romantic excitement, because reality asks questions that attraction cannot answer. What do you both want 5 years from now? How do you handle conflict? How do you handle disappointment? Can you adapt when life changes? Can you respect each other's needs even when they don't perfectly align with your own? These aren't exciting questions. They won't go viral online, but they determine the future of a relationship more than almost anything else. And here's something many men don't expect. A younger woman who genuinely cares about you is not only evaluating who you are today, she's imagining who life feels like with you tomorrow. She's imagining conversations, challenges, growth, difficult seasons, ordinary days. Because eventually relationships stop being about moments. They become about patterns, and patterns reveal truth. Anyone can be charming for a weekend. Anyone can be impressive for a month. But consistency reveals character. That's why I often tell people that relationships don't expose who you are during your best moments. They expose who you are during your ordinary ones. How do you behave when you're stressed? How do you behave when you're disappointed? How do you behave when things don't go your way? Because those moments reveal emotional habits that no amount of attraction can hide forever. And sometimes, this is where older men have an advantage. Not because they're older, because they've lived long enough to learn certain lessons. At least, if they've paid attention. They've experienced setbacks, failures, heartbreak, regret, loss. And ideally, they've learned something from those experiences. The problem is that experience only becomes wisdom when it's processed honestly. Otherwise, experience simply becomes baggage. And there's a huge difference between wisdom and baggage. Wisdom makes you calmer. Baggage makes you defensive. Wisdom makes you compassionate. Baggage makes you suspicious. Wisdom helps you understand people. Baggage makes you expect the worst from them. Women notice that difference. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. Because the emotional atmosphere around a person always reveals what's happening beneath the surface. A man carrying wisdom feels different from a man carrying resentment, even if they say the exact same words. And that's why some younger women feel unexpectedly comfortable around certain older men. Not because those men have perfect lives, not because they're flawless, but because they have stopped fighting themselves. They've accepted certain truths, accepted certain imperfections, accepted that life is complicated. And that acceptance creates a kind of emotional steadiness that many people find deeply attractive. But now we arrive at something most people avoid discussing, something that sits quietly beneath many age gap relationships: the fear of time. Not just age, time. Because sooner or later, every couple must confront the reality that life moves forward. And when there's a significant age difference, that reality can feel more visible, more immediate, more emotionally charged. Some couples avoid the conversation completely, others face it honestly. And the difference between those two choices can determine whether a relationship grows stronger or begins carrying invisible tension. Because love doesn't become deeper by avoiding difficult conversations. It becomes deeper when two people trust each other enough to have them. And that brings us to one of the most important truths about age gap love. A truth that has nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with courage. The courage required to stop pretending that love alone solves everything and start building something real together. There is a moment that happens in almost every meaningful relationship, a moment most people never talk about. It doesn't happen during the first conversation. It doesn't happen during the first kiss. It doesn't even happen when two people realize they're falling in love. It happens later, much later. It's the moment when the excitement fades just enough for reality to become visible. And suddenly, both people are no longer deciding whether they're attracted to each other. They're deciding whether they're willing to truly know each other. That is a completely different decision, because attraction asks, "How do you make me feel?" But real intimacy asks, "Can I handle seeing who you really are?" And that question can be frightening for both people, especially in age gap relationships where assumptions often exist before the relationship even begins. Sometimes society has assumptions. Sometimes friends have assumptions. Sometimes family members have assumptions. And sometimes the loudest assumptions come from the people inside the relationship themselves. One person wonders, will I eventually become too old for them? The other wonders, will people ever take our relationship seriously? These questions often stay hidden, unspoken, quiet. Yet they influence behavior in powerful ways. Because human beings don't only respond to reality, we respond to the stories we tell ourselves about reality. And if those stories remain unchallenged, they quietly shape our decisions. I've watched people sabotage beautiful relationships because they spent more time fearing the future than experiencing the present. Not intentionally, not maliciously, just slowly. One doubt at a time, one assumption at a time, one fear at a time, until eventually they became more connected to their worries than to each other. And that's what makes fear so deceptive. It often feels protective, it feels intelligent, it feels responsible. But sometimes fear is simply preventing you from experiencing something genuine. Now, I'm not suggesting anyone ignore practical realities. Healthy relationships require honesty. Age differences can create real challenges. Different life stages can create real challenges. Different expectations can create real challenges. Pretending those things don't matter helps no one. But there is a difference between acknowledging challenges and becoming controlled by them. One creates awareness, the other creates paralysis. And many men spend years trapped in that paralysis. They become observers of life instead of participants in it, watching opportunities pass, watching connections fade, watching possibilities disappear. Not because they lacked value, because they doubted it. What I find fascinating is that women are often less focused on a man's age than he is. Many men assume their age is the first thing a woman notices. Sometimes it isn't even close. Sometimes she notices his energy, his kindness, his confidence, his humor, his emotional steadiness, his curiosity, his authenticity, the way he treats people, the way he handles pressure, the way he listens, the way he makes her feel when she's around him. Because attraction is rarely a checklist, it's an experience. And experiences are emotional before they're logical. That's why two people can look perfect together on paper and feel nothing. And two people who seem unlikely to everyone else can create a connection that feels deeply meaningful. Human beings are complicated, relationships are complicated, and love has never followed rules as neatly as people wish it would. What matters is whether two people are choosing each other for healthy reasons, whether they're building something based on respect rather than fantasy, whether they're seeing each other clearly rather than projecting desires onto each other. Because eventually, every relationship reaches a point where appearances lose importance. The excitement settles, the novelty fades, and what's left is the emotional truth of the connection. Can you still enjoy each other's company? Can you still respect each other? Can you still support each other's growth? Can you still be honest when conversations become difficult? Those questions matter far more than most people realize, and if you answer them honestly, you'll begin to understand why some age gap relationships flourish while others slowly fall apart. Not because of years, but because of what exists between those years. And there is one final truth about this topic that almost nobody talks about, a truth that may be the most important of all. The final truth is this: most people spend far too much time asking whether someone else will choose them, and far too little time asking whether they have truly become someone capable of building a healthy, meaningful love. Sit with that for a moment, because it's uncomfortable, especially for men who have spent years wondering whether age is helping them or hurting them, whether women see them as attractive, whether they still have opportunities, whether they still matter. Those questions are understandable, human, but they are not the deepest questions. The deepest question is this: who have you become? Not what do you own, not how successful you are, not how young you look, not how many people find you attractive. Who have you become? Because eventually, every relationship becomes an encounter with yourself. That's the part nobody warns you about. You think you're learning about another person, and you are, but you're also discovering parts of yourself that have been hidden for years. Your fears, your patterns, your wounds, your strengths, your capacity for trust, your capacity for love, your capacity for emotional honesty. And that's why relationships can feel so intense. They expose truths we can easily avoid when we're alone. A woman enters your life and suddenly parts of yourself you haven't looked at in years begin asking for attention. Not because she's causing them, because she's revealing them. And if there's a significant age difference, that process can become even more visible, because age has a way of confronting us with time. Time already lived, time still remaining, dreams achieved, dreams abandoned, choices we're proud of, choices we regret. And sometimes, beneath all the discussions about attraction, compatibility, and age gaps, there is a deeper emotional question hiding quietly in the background. Is it too late for me? I've heard that question in different forms for years, sometimes spoken aloud, sometimes hidden beneath other words. And my answer is always the same. Life is not asking whether you're 25 again. Life is asking what you're going to do with the person you are today. Because the truth is, many men become more attractive as they age, not because they become older, but because they become more themselves, more authentic, more grounded, more emotionally aware, less interested in pretending, less interested in chasing approval, more interested in living honestly. And there is something profoundly appealing about a person who no longer feels the need to perform, someone who knows who they are, someone who treats others with dignity, someone who can offer presence instead of games, stability instead of chaos, depth instead of performance. That kind of maturity isn't guaranteed by age, but when it develops, people notice. They feel it. And feelings are often far more powerful than appearances. So if you're watching this wondering whether a woman could genuinely care about a man older than her, the answer is simple. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Just like any other relationship, because women are individuals, not a single mindset. Each woman has her own values, experiences, desires, boundaries, and vision for her future. The real question is not whether women as a group like older men. The real question is whether two specific people can create something healthy, respectful, and meaningful together. That's the question that matters, and perhaps that's also the most freeing realization. You don't need to convince the world. You don't need to win every comparison. You don't need to prove your worth through age, status, or validation. You simply need the courage to become the most honest version of yourself. Because at the end of the day, the strongest relationships are rarely built on age. They're built on trust, on respect, on emotional safety, on shared growth, on the feeling that after all the noise, all the expectations, all the fears, you can finally sit beside someone and stop pretending. And sometimes that feeling is far rarer and far more valuable than people realize. If this conversation gave words to thoughts you've carried quietly for years, then stay close. There are more uncomfortable truths about relationships, attraction, and human nature waiting for us in the next conversation.